Hello, this is Grandmaster Hans Zeman back with a chapter covering the move 1 to c5. This is one of the side chapters, definitely not a main move, I would say, but there is definitely some players that I would, it has some popularity. And after d5, we're going to be pushing past. Here we have it, there's a few options, right? A lot of them transpose as well. One of them to be aware of is e5. This is like, for some reason, this has some level of popularity. I have no idea why, and I think it's just an absolutely ridiculous way to play. The main line is knight f6. We're going to be playing knight c3. We're not going to play, c4 transposing to a banco or the Benoni. Again, just like I avoided the French, I think it's best to avoid this as well. Knight c3. The interesting thing is e6. I should note. I had a game here and at the St. Louis Chess Club in the Saturday night special, and my opponent played here. They played d6, and I remember it actually, looking at this in the course. So even the course could help me, and I remember I was like, I remember, you take and you go bishop b6 and knight e2, and I remembered, knight f4, bishop b7, takes. He didn't let me take the bishop. Actually, he went bishop all the way back to d7, back to d7, and I simply played g3, bishop g2, and I won like a really easy game. So it was actually it was quite a nice feeling to know I looked at this in my chessable course, and I'm learning things, and I'm playing things I've studied in the course. So this was just a little tidbit to notice, right? But d6, e4, g6, this position. There's bishop g4 immediately. There's also bishop b7 immediately. And I've just made, there's a lot of, you could say there's a lot of nuances here and there's things that you could analyze. But again, I'm going for the absolute, just simplest approach. We're going to play bishop c4. We're going to castle. And here after bishop g4, we're simply going to take the bishop pair. And then we're going to play the move bishop to e2. And this is a pretty common theme. And this is the main line sort of by far. And at this point, the queen is actually kind of nice on f3. And the main point is, probably going to be a6, a4. We're going to stop b5. And then sort of, if black isn't able to play b5, we simply have the bishop pair and a space advantage. So, we can look to play, rook e1 or rook d1, followed by bishop f1, sort of keeping this bishop aside. At some point, g4 is an option, right, to extend space on the king side, perhaps moving the queen over to play f4. Just the main point is, let's say a6, a4, just stopping b5 and keeping control over b5 will sort of really hinder black's ability to create any significant counterplay. And there's a few orders, right? So of course we could have reached this order through, let's say, d6 here, bishop d7, bishop c4, knight f6, knight f3, transposing. There's so many we can transpose through knight f6, we can transpose through g6, e4, knight c3, d6, and here we go bishop c4 here. Again, giving our opponent limited ways, knight f6, then we transpose again. So I wanted to just make this as simple as possible. And another main point is that in playing the Jobava London, the most important thing is to make you comfortable playing this as a lifetime repertoire and playing this every single game, because it's going to take care of all of your white repertoire, and there's absolutely nothing else you have to study. So when I look at moves like 1c5 or 1e5 or 1g6, my number one priority is in those openings which are considered dubious, first of all, to give you an extremely simple and understandable approach of the development and the plans, just so you can focus on playing the actual opening in the main lines, right? Because from a statistical perspective, if we're talking pure numbers, right, the amount of times statistically your opponent plays c5, it's the percentage. I'm not an expert here, but I would estimate if you play the move d4, I would say it's like 45-45 between knight f6 and d5, and then that 10%, is a collection of like e6, c5, e5, and g6, right? So I've included these chapters because it's a lifetime repertoire, but the goal is to make things as simple as possible just from a developmental perspective, right? So let's go to the main line, d6, e4, g6. And, we can go here immediately. But again, we go bishop e2, right? Why do we need to go bishop c4 if we're going to go bishop e2 anyways? The whole point behind bishop to c4 is that let's say we play bishop e2, and then I go bishop g4. Now we take with a bishop, and the queen is stuck on d1. We actually want the queen to actually recapture on f3. So the queen is on f3 when we move the bishop back to e2, because this queen is actually strong because it can either go to g3 to prepare f4 and e5, and it can also go, g4 to queen g2 to f4. So from this perspective, it's sort of advantageous, right? So we should all, of course, be knowledgeable, right? We can play a6, a4, including this, bishop e2. They can go queen e5, we play bishop d2. Again, to shut this down, queen b4, you got to be worried about the queen being trapped. You could probably even ignore this pawn, just playing rook d4. If takes, rook b1, queen a3, rook b3. So again, the bishop pair is great. So, obviously you can play knight bd7 without this whole thing, but now you just go rook to e1. And again, right, like it's hard for me to take this stuff seriously because, let's say that you go knight b6 and bishop f1 and they don't play bishop to g4 and you're allowed to play h3, then this bishop is doing absolutely nothing. You have a huge space advantage. All your pieces on perfect squares. Let's say they do play bishop g4 and you take here. You've just got the absolute improved version of the entire variation because your bishop's already on f1. The knight's on b6 where it doesn't want to be because you want to play a6, b5. So you've lost like 4 or 5 tempos here already. So already the precision that's necessary is already ridiculous. So in terms of a move order, right, all these sort of g6, a mix of here g6, the d6, and knight f6 are all going to lead to the same development of plans because in this case, you're going to play bishop g7, knight f6 in any case, right? It's not like you're going to go bishop g7, knight h6, right? So, and all for all purposes, we're going to be transposing in this case, which just makes it really, really simple for us. There's a few sort of nuances. You could say bishop c4 here. Again, transposition. I'm trying to find a place where there isn't a transposition. Let's go to e4 next because I think just to summarize that spec. When we get this position, again, bishop c4. It's just so simple, right? Castles. If they don't play bishop g4, then you go h3, and the bishop is just terrible, and you have a huge space advantage and great pieces. So the other idea, which is sort of trendy, this sort of theme itself is sort of the worst version of the theme because this idea is most effective. Like, let's say you play knight of 6, c4, c5, d5, then e5. This isn't as bad because c4 and is sort of the inclusion of knight of 6 in exchange for c4 is an improvement. So them actually going for d5, e5 is just worse because we get e4 and then we bring the knight to c3. And instead of the pawn being on c4, we retain that square for the knight to come from f3 to d2 to c4. So here there's a few ways, right? Like, they can go g6 to go to g7. I think bishop e7 is the most common move, and this idea of bishop g4 is quite thematic and quite popular. The point is that you're going to trade here and then give up the bishop pair, but then trade these bishops. And it's an interesting idea, but we simply play h3. We take, and after bishop g5, we're going to go for an extremely direct idea. We're going to take the bishop, and we're going to play queen to g4. And we're ready to go to an endgame. And we're forcing our opponents into a very, very unpleasant endgame. Okay, I guess there's a glitch there. We're just going to roll with that. Chess base. Guys, chess base. I know I'm using it for this course, but Chessable is just the new flow, yo. Like the cool kids use Chessable. You feel me, bro? No cap on a stack, bro. But basically, if the queen moves anywhere, right, you're going to invade with check. So you have to trade. And after trading, you double these pawns. But these are the good type of double pawns, right? Because you have the open file. You can go g5 to restrict the knight from developing. You've also got the idea of just pushing this pawn all the way to a6. And you've got a huge space advantage. You've got great pieces. And again, black is just so passive and just has absolutely no space. So this is an easy way to just crush this line. A line that is played so many times that people just think is fine. If they go knight f6, knight d2, we go a4. Next we're going to go knight c4. We're going to go a5. Again, black has absolutely no play. Like there's simply not an active idea in sight. Right. So let's say in this case they go for a6. You can include a6, right? And then even if they go bishop e7 with a6, the idea still remains the same. Like in this position, we still play queen g4. And, let's say takes. If you look at this position, the moves a6 and a4 are going to be included anyways. Like if we go all the way back here, bishop e7 out of 3 here, like a very logical move here would be a6 to try to play b5, and then we played a4, right? So it's simply a transposition, and a transposition that would, be reached anyways. So the inclusion of a6 makes sense, but it doesn't really make much of a difference. Because there's sort of moves that are going to be included anyways, right? So let's say they go g6. We simply go bishop e2. It's important to go bishop e2 before knight f3. If we go knight f3, then bishop g4 could be a little bit annoying with the bishop h6 idea. But if we go bishop e2 first, bishop e7, then knight f3, if bishop g4, we simply go knight d2, trading these bishops, preparing the knight to come to c4, with a4 and knight b5, again, d6 being such a weakness. So in this case, let's say, the knight e7, we can actually go h4 here, and it's an extremely strong move. And, maybe, if what I'm saying isn't convincing enough, if you trust the computer, it's literally like +2 here. Like, I see so many games in the database, and I honestly just feel bad for these players because, like this, when I was analyzing this and the England Gambit, I was honestly like really struggling to just like take it seriously because all the analysis I was doing was really like actually challenging and really I had to think. Like it was not like I just, most popular move, write some annotations, and I would follow all the theory. Like I had to create all the own theory. I had to find all these difficult ideas. And then when I see this position, I'm like, +2 computer, 5,000 games. Like, this is not like, big work, right? So we're forcing black to make a decision whether they're going to allow h6, or they're going to prevent it, or they're going to play h6 in anticipation of h5. So h5 is the most natural stopping it. But now this f5 idea has become completely useless because the g5 square is completely open for the knight. So now we just basically have absolutely nothing to worry about. We can play h5. We can just sort of wait until, okay, play f5. I dare you. Okay, I'm going to go knight to g5. I'm going to have a huge outpost. This knight in e7 is just so ugly. There's absolutely nowhere to go. These pieces are dead. This position is just absolutely hideous, and I honestly don't want to look at it for any longer. Let's say castles, then we get h5, and we're breaking through in the h-file. This one's dead. Once the h-file opens, not even opening the h-file, just from a positional perspective, knight d2, knight c4, a4, knight c4 is untouchable. You even go a5 to cover the b6 square to like stop knight d7, knight to b6, challenging that on c4. So I'm just struggling to find, right? So let's say, again, I could even just tell you one plan and you can crush this opening, right? Knight f3, knight d2, knight c4, a4, a5. Establish a knight, establish a spatial control of the queen side, and then just watch your opponent try to move their pieces around when they have absolutely zero space. It's honestly, you could just like bring the knight to c4, play a4, a5, and just like give them 10 free moves and watch them try to figure things out. And then they slowly come to the life-altering realization that their opening is absolutely terrible. And I wish this opening didn't even exist because I wouldn't have to waste your guys' time with it. Because honestly, this is it's just ridiculous, this move e5. And I think this needs to be, if you are a c5, e5 player, I highly, highly urge you to please stop playing this. But for all my students, all my Jobava London, apostles, we're in business, baby. We're in business. This is good. So, essentially, the entire crux of the point is, again, maintaining our space advantage like we have in these positions where opponents have given us space. Again, a4, in the positions with e5, it's crucial to bring the knight to from f3 all the way to d2 to c4 because it's just great putting pressure on d6. You can hop to e3 as well to cover f5. It's a great square for the knight. So in general, this isn't like that theoretically challenging of a line. So you don't need to memorize much. Just the general ideas will suffice. So thank you guys for watching this chapter. This is, the side chapters are probably a little bit less intense. And again, I think that just really shows that the Jobava really can be a Latin repertoire, and an extremely effective one at that. So thank you guys for watching, and I'm looking forward to the next chapters.